So welcome everybody, class of 2022 specifically. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We're excited to have you. We're excited to get started with you. We're going to start the program tonight with a short welcome from Madam Thiel to get us started. Katie?
Thank you, Mr. Bohm. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the College Counseling Department as they put on this invaluable program. Obviously, the format is a little bit different, and that's okay. It's been a strange year for that. But it's certainly been a season for giving thanks, sharing gratitude. A lot of us have that on our minds, over the course of this next week. And throughout all of the ups and downs of the pandemic, I would say without a doubt that the thing I've been most grateful for are my colleagues. And the adults on this call will tell you that there is nothing more important than surrounding yourself with competent people and making sure that you're working together. And I just can say without reservation that Mr. Bohm, Ms. Souza, and Mr. Duffy are without a doubt some of the most competent, caring, and compassionate people that I know. And as you will see on the call this evening, they surround themselves with great people. And so I want to say thank you to the panelists that have joined us this evening. They are giving of their free time for you and to ensure that you find the best fit possible in your college experience. I'm going to quote the Philadelphia 76ers in saying that you should trust the process. I'm pretty sure that college admissions has been using that phrase long before the 76ers ever adopted it. And that goes to say that, from my personal experience, if I had ended up where I thought that I would in my junior year of college, my life would undoubtedly be very different than it is today. And, all of the guidance that I received from adults in my life, not just from my parents, but from professionals in the field, that's really how I ended up, where I am today. And so you're in very, very capable hands. I very much look forward to where this process takes you. And I hope that you'll be open-minded and resilient throughout it, and know that while the world has seen a number of changes over the past year, this is, certainly not an exception to the rule, but that you are in very capable hands and that there are people to help guide you through the changes over the next couple of years. So thank you again, College Counseling, for having me. Thank you to our panelists as well, and enjoy the evening.
Thank you, Madam Thiel. Appreciate it. As I said earlier, excited for tonight. We always like to have friends on the panels, invite some of our friends. Normally it's in person, so we get to have dinner and things like that. So all of our panelists, we do owe you dinner tonight. You can cash in on that at some other point. Yeah, I see the heads nodding. That's wonderful. Juniors, we will always say we will meet you wherever you are. So there are probably some of you that got the email for the panel and going, it's about time College Counseling got in touch with me. I've been ready to go. And some of you were probably said something like, oh, I guess it's time to get started now. And whatever the reaction was, we're ready to get started with you. The format for tonight's program, Mr. Duffy and I, Logan Duffy, will be asking pre-designed questions of certain admissions professionals who will introduce themselves in a little bit. Miss Souza will be manning the chat function tonight. So if you do have questions that you either like answered or would like to ask of our panelists, you can put them in the chat function. And there's also the ability, we have enabled the ability to vote up questions. So the questions that get voted up the highest, Ms. Souza will be asking of our panelists, and perhaps the ones that are maybe more individualized, she'll be trying to answer for everybody within the chat. Catherine, you want to get into a little bit more about college counseling and guidance?
Hi, everyone. Hi, juniors. Wanted to talk a little bit just to set the stage as we begin this journey together. Again, you have been assigned at this point a college counselor, and we did that at the beginning of the semester. And you'll be either working with myself, Mr. Bohm, or Mr. Duffy. We are here to help you all things college. We're here to answer your questions, to counsel you, to advise you, to use our collective years of experience in college admissions to help you make the best decisions and find your best fit. We do that parallel with your school counselor, Miss Dove. You will continue to work with Miss Dove for academic, emotional and social support, and we will work with Miss Dove together to support you on all of those different things. So just know that we're here to help, and we are excited to get started, and again, to help each of you find your home for the next 4 years. I know it'll be here before you know it, and we're excited to get started. And again, excited to work with Miss Dove, who I know all of you have just finished meeting up with, and really excited to get started.
Oh, Mr. Bohm, now he gave Ed a hard time about that first.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so just as a little calendar reminder for the parents in here, we have junior parent nights upcoming on December 14th, January 13th. Only require that you attend one of them. So we require that at least one parent attends one of those events. They're the same event. You don't need to come to both. So just make sure you note to your parents of those 2 dates. And if you are a parent, please mark those down. We'll also send reminders upcoming, but just to get it on your calendar early.
Okay. And juniors in the room tonight, just a reminder about the practice ACT exam that we are offering, certainly optional. If you can't make the date, we will also allow you to self-administer that at home. I did get an email from a couple junior parent moms who are trying to organize an administration of that practice test. So I'm sure the students aren't very excited about that, but it sounds like there's going to be another administration of the practice ACT for those that can attend that December Saturday. And we'll also be offering a practice SAT in the month of January at some point, date to be determined. Now on with our panel. We're going to allow, again, I want to thank all of our panelists for giving their time tonight. Some old friends, or just friends. We won't call you old friends. And please, Mr. Wright, definitely do not share how long we've known each other. We'll just be aging each other drastically. I want to give everyone a chance just to introduce themselves, where they're coming from, their background, their schools, so we have some context of who's joining us tonight, and then we'll get started with questions. So Melinda, you're starting us off tonight.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Melinda DeMaria, and I'm the Associate Director of Admissions at the University of Georgia. And my thanks to Chris and to Logan and to Catherine and Madam Thiel for hosting us this evening. Yes, my accent is very thick and very real. I am a native of Georgia, and I'm excited to be talking with you tonight from the classic city, which is Athens, Georgia. We're about an hour northeast of Atlanta. We're in the smallest landmass county in the state of Georgia. And if you are following the elections at all for the state of Georgia, there was a little blue dot kind of up. And we are very excited to be able to talk with you. We've been working with Archmere for a number of years, and excited to be able to speak with you tonight. We are a large research institution. We're a land grant and sea grant institution. Have about 30,000 undergraduate students on our campus. And we are in a quintessential college town. So when the state of Georgia was ready to begin their flagship institution, determining where they were going to be, Athens was a really obvious farming community, not too far from the mountains, but about 4 hours from the coast. And so the university put its roots down, and Athens has grown up around it. It has been, for myself and my husband, who is a native Long Islander, a wonderful place to start a family. Mr. Duffy's face says it all. Wait a minute, how does that happen? We met in Clemson at Clemson University in graduate school. My first job out of school was at the University of Pennsylvania. So Delaware actually feels a little special to me. While I got married in Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania, that is really just across the state line, as most of you know. So Delaware and Pennsylvania all certainly are very much home to me. My husband had no desire to return to New York, and I had no desire to return to Southeast Georgia. So Athens has been a wonderful place. We've got over 170 majors for students to choose from. And coming from an Ivy League school, coming back to the state of Georgia, and getting to know UGA, I left in 93 4 and I came back in 99, and the Hope Scholarship did some amazing things for the state. Hope is our state lottery funded scholarship. And it was fascinating to see how the demographics of our student body changed in that time that I was away. In the 21 years now that I have been at UGA, I would certainly say this is a selective institution that when people say, why should I consider UGA? My response is, why would you not? I think that there are some really unique, special things about the school that if you get to know us beyond what you hear as rumor and stereotype, you really may be surprised. But again, my thanks to Madam Thiel and to Chris, Logan, and Catherine for hosting us tonight, and excited to take your questions.
Thanks, Melinda. Amy?
Hi, everyone. I'm up the coast a little bit from Georgia. My name is Amy Sembor. I am the Senior Associate Dean of Admission at Providence College in Providence, Rhode Island. From one small state to another, right? Our friends down in Delaware. We are, let's see, Providence is a Catholic liberal arts college. So what does liberal arts even mean, right? It's we have about 50 different majors, and we're just over 4,000 students. So a little bit different from what Melinda's coming to us from here. We're a small school in the realm of colleges and universities. We're primarily undergraduate. Our students like to get their hands dirty and dig in and do research and explore. We have a very strong business school as part of the college, as well as our biology and psychology majors, though political science has had a significant uptick in the number of students majoring in poli-sci lately as well. Our students come to PC for the engagement to become part of what we call the Friar family. We are Division I in our athletics, and for a small college to have a Division I competitive Big East program is pretty special. We love to get out there, and as Mr. Bohm himself has appreciated, have people screaming and yelling and cheering for the Friars out on the basketball court, the hockey rink, the soccer fields, wherever it may be. So it really does become part of, I think, the community and the student life on campus. We're in the city of Providence, which is a great city that I think gets overshadowed by Boston, which is our neighbor to the north by about 45 minutes. So if you want to get up to Boston, you certainly can, but there's lots to do on campus as well as right there in the city. We have some great little restaurants, even doing the takeout and all kinds of outdoor seating. Our mayor in Providence has closed the streets on our little Italy section, our Federal Hill, so that you can eat outdoors with the heat lamps and whatnot during these times. So we encourage our students to take a look around the city and to explore, and we're about 75% Catholic. You know, for those of you who want to consider your faith as part of your college journey as well, it's something that resonates within our student body as well. So thank you everyone for having me. I definitely would love to be down there in Delaware with you all tonight, but at least we get to chat this way as well.
Thank you, Amy. Liana?
Great, thank you for having us all join you tonight, and you're traveling even further north to come and visit me virtually right now in Montreal, Canada. So my name is Liana Dumond, and I'm one of the recruitment and admissions officers here at McGill. I am a native of Montreal, born and raised here. My #1 goal for university was to have an away experience. So perhaps like many of you might be thinking out, not just outside your state or outside your part of the United States, but maybe outside the country. I actually worked for several years in a study abroad program. And so I'm a big advocate of gap years, if anybody's wondering about that. I ended up doing my degree in the US, which is something probably when I was a high school junior, I never thought would happen to me. But you take the opportunities that come in front of you, and I realized that it would be a really great experience for me to do that. And it ultimately launched my career working in US college admissions. So I actually started my career working in the US and spent 10 years working with students like yourselves in their college search and enrollment process, and now have been back in Montreal and at McGill for just about 10 years. So my passion is really international education, and love talking with students about all the opportunities and how your undergrad can help build those international experiences. So certainly if you choose to apply to McGill or any university in Canada, you're already having an international experience just by leaving your country. But that is one of the things I love about McGill is the diversity of our students and where they come from. We are 30% international students coming from 150 countries. So just being on campus really is truly a global experience. You're going to hear many different languages around you all the time. We are an English language university. If you are familiar with Montreal, you probably know that Montreal is known as a French-speaking city. And certainly French is a language you're going to hear a lot, but not the only language you'll hear. Montreal is the second largest city in Canada, so it's very much urban living. And with that comes our population who have really come to Montreal from all over the world. So you do see that we're really a multilingual city, with most people speaking at least a little bit of French or English. Many people, neither one is their first language. They might speak an entirely different language. So certainly your classes at McGill know they would be taught to you in English. But if you would like to learn French or any other language, you'll have a lot of opportunity to do that. About 30% of our students speak French as a first language. We are a pretty big university. We are a large research-intensive public institution. That being said, we do have 2 campuses at McGill. So if a large school is not your field, it's not what you want, if you don't want to be right in an urban center, you might be interested in our second campus, which is the Mcdonald campus. And that's for students interested in areas of science. So we do offer sciences on both of our campuses and do want you to spend a little bit of time researching the similarities and the differences between the two before you apply, because you are going to apply to a program when you apply for admission. Other than that, as far as your experience at a university in Canada in general, and obviously at McGill, want you to know that your 4-year undergraduate bachelor's degree experience can be very similar to a US college. We have your general general education requirements in your first year. You're going to have access to taking elective classes in many different disciplines and subjects. Of course, internships, research, honors programs, all those interesting things that you want to do to help build into your degree experience. Know that you certainly will have that available to you at our campus. So I will just leave it to say, I don't think it's at the size. We're 25,000 undergraduate students, about 40,000 total. And very much an urban environment. Our downtown campus is a traditional campus feel, but literally in the middle of the city. So we have a nice hybrid feel of a campus right downtown.
Thank you, Liana. Ed?
Well, good evening, everyone. And I also want to thank everyone from Archmere for inviting me to be part of the panel tonight. My name is Ed Wright. I am the Vice President of Enrollment at Lebanon Valley College. So we are about 90 minutes from where you are there in Delaware. And we are an undergraduate school of about 1,600 students. We are a small private liberal arts school. We're about 15 minutes from Hershey. So we're right in between Lancaster and Harrisburg. We're a residential campus, so the majority of our students do live on campus. We have about 40 majors to choose from. I think we're best known for our health sciences. So we have really strong majors in physical therapy, athletic training, speech language pathology. Many of our new majors have really focused on also kind of a direct entry into a graduate program. So speech language pathology is one of the new majors, but we've also just recently added a new 3+2 in mental health counseling, which is in our psychology department, and also have added a 3+1 in accounting. So we are really looking to grow more in the graduate area, but we are more of a traditional undergraduate type of institution. Other things, we have about 26 athletic programs. I would say about 40% of the students that we enroll each year are student athletes. So it's not uncommon for us to have a lot of incoming freshmen that are student athletes. We have about 80 different clubs and organizations. I would say the one thing that really speaks to a student at LVC is someone who just is very passionate about both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. So we have some really, really hardworking students, but students who would not only get a good degree, but also participate in the athletics, possibly be part of a marching band or ensemble. So our students wear many hats. And I'll just finish by saying we're also a school that's very generous with our merit scholarships and need-based aid. I know this year we just implemented a brand new program where every student that we admit is guaranteed a merit scholarship. So we do certainly try to make the college experience as affordable as possible. So thanks for having me, and I look forward to the other questions.
Thanks, Ed. Doug, you're up.
Thanks very much, Chris, and good evening, everyone. It's great to be here with you. I'm the Executive Director of Admissions at the University of Delaware, if you couldn't tell that from my background. So University of Delaware, what's distinctive about us? Well, it's interesting. One thing I would suspect is that many of you believe you know a lot about the University of Delaware, and you probably know a fair amount, but there's probably a lot that you don't know. So one of the things that I am pleased to tell you is that we are currently open for visitors. So think about that, juniors, as you're working through the year. We're keeping those visits small. At the moment, we're visiting the outside of buildings, but we are having our visitors meet with our currently enrolled students. We'll talk to you about their experiences, tons of virtual content too, so that you can dig in for majors of interest and those sorts of things to really get a deep inside look at the university. So the University of Delaware is a research university, like some of the other schools on the call. We're also a flagship. We're a land grant, sea grant, space grant. So what does that all mean? If you think about the schools that are like us in terms of classification, they would be the other flagships like in the area, like University of Maryland, Penn State, Rutgers, etc. I think the thing that's different about the University of Delaware that you may not realize relative to the other schools in our classification, one thing is size. So we're moderately sized. We have about 18,000 undergraduate students, which is a lot smaller than some of those other schools that I described, but plenty big. But the other thing that's different about us as a flagship, each year we bring in about 4,000 undergraduate students, new undergraduate students. About 1,300 of them are from the state of Delaware, which means the majority of our incoming class is coming from outside of the state. And the reason I point that out, the reason I think that's important to you is to understand that you will be taking classes with students not only from outside of Delaware, but from around the world. So the experience of coming to the University of Delaware would not simply be a continuation of what you've already experienced. We are thrilled at the number of students who come to us from Archmere each year. But even that number, when you put it in the context of 4,000 new students, you will be surrounded by new opportunities. So the University of Delaware is really anxious to have you get to know us more deeply. We want to work with you through this process. We know it's been a tough almost year at this point. So whatever we can do to partner with you to help you figure it all out, we're here to do that with you. So glad to be here with you this evening, and thanks so much for allowing me to share a few things. Chris?
Doug, thank you very much. I will let our audience know I didn't get turned down from anybody to do this panel tonight. So, and that's a tribute to the Archmere community, that admissions professionals want to get in front of our students, in front of our community, to impress, but also to educate and share. So thank you very much for all of your time tonight. As you noticed, if you pay attention to the descriptions of the school, it's an extremely diverse panel in terms of where people are coming from, everything from faith-based to size to location to educational delivery. And what we're going to do is try to draw some of that, more of that out in our questions tonight, because that speaks to fit, that every school is not the same. Every experience will not be the same. And while we only have 5 colleges and universities on the panel, there's so many more out there to look at. I see people have found the Q&A function. I think I misled people earlier in saying we're going to take questions through the chat function. It's actually through the Q&A function. I already see some questions popping up there. Please feel free to upvote them. Some of them are questions that are already on our list, including our first one. Our first question is going to go to Melinda and Ed, please. In a virtual search world, and Melinda, I know your daughter just went through this at the end of her search last year. How can a student learn the most about your school, your community, and the education that you provide? How have you attempted to improve the virtual experiences for prospective students?
I will tell you, it's a little strange to be actually sitting in my daughter's bedroom, knowing that she is in college, and to think about the tears that were being cried just this time last year. And that was before the pandemic had an impact on our house. The virtual format that we have been trying to provide at the University of Georgia is probably similar to a lot of my peers across the country, in that we are offering a virtual campus visit experience. We are open as a university, but we are not offering in-person campus tours. We will equip you with a self-guided tour. Our virtual campus visit experience is 15 minutes with the admissions officer, and then 2 different student tour guides who kind of take you through virtual images and give you a play-by-play. And I will tell you, I am one of the 3 people at our institution who see those survey results and get the feedback from that. And people are pleased with what we're doing. One of the things that we have added as a supplement to that are drop-in virtual hours at our visitor center, where students can just kind of drop in on Zoom to the visitor center and talk with currently enrolled students. We also have a virtual Q&A panel that happens twice a week that includes somebody from admissions as well as student tour guides to give, again, that additional student perspective. We're comprised of 17 schools and colleges that kind of harbor our 170 majors that we offer. And within the majority of those schools and colleges, particularly those that service undergraduate students only, they are offering a combination of in-person as well as virtual student experiences with their student ambassador groups. So how do you navigate this? You've got to find the situation that's going to work the best for you, that's going to work best with your guardians or parents who are helping you do those visits. Plan ahead, be looking ahead to see what are limits and restrictions that local communities are putting in place. And as we know, at least if any of you were able to eat your dinner tonight and see any local news, you're aware that the city of New York has just put in some changes. So be thoughtful of those things as you're traveling and making those plans. But we are trying to meet students and families where they are. We did some analysis today of our back end of how much Zoom was being used by our office just from August 1st to today, looking at webinar meetings as well as just general meeting times on Zoom. And it comes up to about 32,000 hours. And if you break that down, that puts over 3 years worth of hours that we have been servicing students this fall. So we are not letting this slow us down. This is our first year on Common App, and so a natural thing that schools see when they move to the Common Application is an increase in applications. We're up 28%. Perhaps it is solely based on Common App, but we also think that we have been meeting students where they needed to be met in this virtual format. So, Ed?
You're muted, Ed. Sorry.
All right, sorry about that. Rookie mistake. Yeah, so we are implementing Plan A and Plan B at the same time, it seems like continuously, just because things just evolve and change by the day, it seems like. I know just for us, a major curveball was thrown at us yesterday by the governor of Pennsylvania that said that we are no longer allowed to have people from out of state visit Pennsylvania unless they have tested positive or negative in the last 72 hours or quarantined for 14 days. So that's relevant, obviously, at Archmere, because I know the student body there makes up a couple of different states. So if you're from Pennsylvania and go to Archmere, you're more than welcome to visit our campus right now. But if you are from Delaware, Maryland, or New Jersey and attend Archmere, then you will have to either quarantine for 14 days and or test negative within the last 72 hours. So that literally just happened yesterday, and we have events that are scheduled on campus this week and next week, and actually hosting an open house on December 5th. So we're constantly having to change, but What it has done for a lot of our schools is made us stronger virtually. So we have tours. Most of us have had virtual tours before the pandemic, but we've obviously put a lot more attention and content into those virtual tours. Our virtual tours are anytime tours, so you can view them at 10 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning. But we also have student guided virtual tours to where you can talk to one of our current students while you're navigating the campus, ask questions in real time. So we're trying to be very flexible with both our virtual options of any time or with a student. We're doing a lot more chats with student to student, so you can ask our current students questions, how's the food, what's there to do on weekends, things like that. But really, I feel at LBC, without question, one of our major selling points is our faculty. They really take a caring interest and really try to pull the potential out of our students. And they are, without question, what our alumni say was their most impactful experience at LBC was just their interactions with faculty, how they helped them land that first job or the graduate degree or something like that. So we have a lot of chats now with our faculty. They're more than gracious with their time to talk to prospective students about LBC and some potentials that you have to do research or to do some internships or co-ops. So we're trying to do everything both in person and virtual for as long as we can. And oftentimes it's mandates by the governor or mandates by people outside of our campus community who dictate what we can and can't do. But we're also trying to be, for the sake of students, to be as extremely flexible as possible. I would also say that our office is open every night. Monday through Thursday, we have open our information sessions to where you can talk to a college counselor, or you can just talk to some of our students. So I would certainly encourage you to look at websites and make sure that you're seeing what schools have to offer. I think there's a lot more that's being done on weekends, both in person and virtually. So there's certainly a lot of options out there for you to take advantage of. And it's just a matter of finding them on the different colleges you might be considering this website.
Cool. Thank you, Ed.
Sure.
And Melinda. So as Mr. Bohm said at the beginning, we've got students that are at very different points to this process, some that are on, and families that are on their, that is their first student through the search, and they haven't even begun to think about it. So Amy and Melinda, what advice do you have for students and families that are just starting to think about this process?
Want me to go, Melinda? I think the important thing to, there are a couple things. One would be, I would encourage students who are serious about the process to stop and to think about what's important to them. Don't think about colleges, don't think about what you've heard, don't think about what your best friend's older sister has done. Think about what's important to you. What do you need to survive? And I mean that in a good way. What are the things that you will need to thrive? Do you like the small personalized attention that you get in high school? Knowing that any college you go to is going to be bigger than Archmere, by the way, or most of them out there, of the 3,000 plus that exist in the US, plus the international schools. But there are places where you will get more individualized attention. There are places where you're going to be part of a larger student body and you're going to feel some kind of energy and enthusiasm from that as well. So there's not a right or a wrong answer. It's what do you think is going to be best? What do you like? Do you like a lot of options? Do you like a straight path in front of you? Those sorts of things. I would encourage you to, as I said a moment ago, don't think about what your best friend's older sister did, or don't think about what your neighbor down the street heard, or what your parents' experience was, or your guardian's experience was. This is 2020, as weird as it is. And this year's experience and next year's experience is very different than it even was 10 years ago in college, regardless of the pandemic. You all will have your own unique experiences based on where you're headed. So that's why I say to stop and think about what's interesting to you or what you need to be successful, and to try to not believe the hype that's out there. Try to think about all different pieces of it. You have some great counselors here on this call who have a lot of experience, and a lot of teachers, I'm sure, who've had some great experience. So maybe chat with some of them too. Try to do some of that internal thinking and searching before you start to reach outward and start to think about names of schools, perhaps, if you're just getting started. If you started to do some of that self-reflection, then find the places that have a little bit, the majors that you might be interested in. If you're undecided, find places that have lots of majors. Before I turn it over to Melinda, I just want to say one other thing. I think it's important for all of you. This is November of your junior year. You still have time to continue to be successful in school and to pay attention to your grades and your course selection for next year. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But also think about your actions and your engagement with your community where you are. Things on the internet don't go away. Things out in the community have repercussions to them, right? Actions have consequences. And I only bring that up because there is a lot that comes up in application processes. There have been times where we've had to rescind admission offers because of things that students did that they're probably not so proud of. So I only say that to say be careful. And yes, I'm a mother, so that comes from the mom part of me. But think about that piece too. I'll stop there so I don't start to scare anyone and spiral down.
Oh, Amy, I'll take the scary part from here. I will underscore a lot of what Amy said. I remember as a parent watching my daughter go through junior year 2 years ago, going, oh my gosh, if we can just get through junior year. Senior year is no joke, and there is a lot of emotion and a lot of stress that goes with it. So my advice for you would be to breathe in and breathe out, and to take some time to just go be silent and still somewhere, and to take in what is going on around you. I went to Disney World years ago, before my kiddos were born, and I would love to see your faces right now as I share this, but I did the Tower of Terror ride, and in part I was fascinated by Tower of Terror because a Clemson alum was one of the Imagineers who helped create it. And as the doors closed and the start of the elevator, thrill ride was going to start, the assistant said, what do you have with a clock and a mirror? Time to reflect. And then, of course, the scary ride pursued. Well, you've got some time to reflect. So as you are going and navigating through your junior year, and as you see senior year coming, how do you want to reflect on it as a student? As a parent, how do you want to look back on this time with that student and remember this time? I think it's important to breathe deeply as you go through this. Make your list of schools, get all the mail that's going to come in, sort it out, decide what looks attractive, what looks appealing. We have all sorts of tactics and marketing data to help us determine what we're going to send to you and what we think is going to be appealing to you. But at the end of the day, it's where do you feel like you're going to find your people? I will tell you that on the week of March 13th, 2020, Chris knows this, we visited one of the schools that my daughter had been admitted to, and hands down, this is where she was going. Like, we could see her, this was it. And by the end of the week, she got another acceptance with an honors admit to it, and the outcome totally messed with her head. And so she spent some time talking with currently enrolled students at both institutions, following those programs on their Instagram page and watching their Instagram stories, and really trying to read those student stories, because hello, now we were in a pandemic, and how is she going to make that final decision? And it was hearing those stories and hearing those students and where she felt like she was going to connect and make a connection. At the end of the day, for those of you that are parents in the room and juniors in the room, on November 18th, 2022, students, you will not be at Archmere. You are going to be at one of our institutions or one of 4,000 other schools. You're going to get there. So just breathe.
Thank you, guys. I see this question getting some attention in the Q&A, and it's on our agenda as well. I'm going to direct this, Melinda, you've been directed to it, but I'm going to give it to Liana as well, since you've answered a couple questions in a row. So Liana, Doug, and Ed, all of your schools have decided to have a test optional application option this year. What are the plans for the future, and how might an application be reviewed differently if a student does not submit their test scores? So I assume I'm correct in that you are test optional. What are the plans for the future, and how might an application decision be made differently if a student does or doesn't submit their test scores? Liana, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yes, we are test optional this year, and we are a school that up until now did require testing. I know that's been changing significantly over the last 10 years. But at this point, the truth is I can't give a specific clear answer. The reality is we're still figuring it out. And for you guys, your world is, you know, what you know around you, and to put it into context for an international university like ourselves, our US applicants are only 15% of our 40,000 applications that we get. So we have to navigate all the changes caused by COVID for every single applicant pool, which is quite significant. I will reassure you in saying you're not at a disadvantage whether you submit test scores or not. And I know there's so much pressure on numbers. There's so much pressure, and there's so many statistics, and there's rankings, and you're constantly getting all these numbers thrown at you. And I will just say, please trust that we're going to be as fair and equitable as we can in whatever each of our institutions need to do to adjust our processes to these changes. I will say that McGill is test optional for sure for this incoming class. We hope to make a decision in plenty of time before next year, before you guys as juniors would be applying, obviously long before. Unfortunately, COVID is not going away anytime soon. And there's a lot of states that are in a much worse reality than you guys are with access to testing and not being able to be in school at all, you know. So I suspect just that alone will result in us being test optional again next year, but we really won't know until we get further through this admission cycle and have a chance to adjust to all the changes this year.
Doug, you want to take a stab at this next, please?
Sure. So at the University of Delaware, we have been test optional for Delaware residents who attend Delaware schools. We've been test optional since 2017. So we do have quite a bit of experience with this. For the coming year, for those of you who reside outside of the state of Pennsylvania, we're test optional for the class that's applying for next fall. At this point, we don't know what will happen beyond that. I think that I can't predict what will happen for that. But for those of you who are residents of the state, because we've been doing this for a while, we I think have a very good system. The difference for students who apply test optional is that they're required to do 3 very short answer essays. There's 3 questions, the answers are 250 words each. And what that does for us is it allows us to dig in a little deeper for the metacognitive characteristics, things outside of your grades in class that might be associated with ultimate success. The nice thing, the good thing for you about schools that are test optional in my experience, and I've read a lot of test optional applications, is we really have to read your application. Test scores can work as a shorthand. So if you've got great grades and great test scores, boom, we move on. Well, you've worked so hard on that application. You deserve to have it read thoroughly. And that's how we really get to know all about you. And it really helps us understand what you're bringing to the institution. The other nice thing about our test optional practice is that you can have your cake and eat it too. You can decide that you do want to submit scores if you've taken the test and you have that opportunity. You took the test, you love your scores, submit them. If you change your mind after you've done that, you can. So we don't, we make it very easy on you to give your scores or not give your scores. There is no advantage one way or the other in terms of things that you might be eligible for. It doesn't affect, can you apply for honors? Yes. Can you get merit? Yes. Is every major open to you? Yes. So the test optional policy is a good one, and it's one we have lots of experience with, and we're thrilled with it. So we'll see what happens for out-of-staters beyond next year.
Cool, thank you. So kind of piggybacking off of that, with the test optional policies, maybe expanding, extending, whatever you want to call it, there's going to be that inclusion of possibly more qualitative pieces of the application process. Well, in the interest of question equity, Amy, Ed, talk to us about how the qualitative pieces of the application process might be reviewed in your office. How can students expect to be have them included in their application process? We'll start with Ed, since he's unmuted.
Okay. I learned earlier to do that. So we are very qualitative, to be honest. I know we put a lot of emphasis on the GPA and certainly the rigor of the courses and whatnot. We have also been an SAT optional school for over 10 years. So this is something that's not uncommon for us. But in terms of the non-quantitative, we certainly look at everything that's submitted. There's no piece of information that a student submits on their application that is not looked at. I will say for us though, it's really coming down to looking at teacher recommendations and school counselor recommendations. I do feel that there is a lot of information that can be gleaned off of that helps us. But overall, our admission into the college is somewhere in the 75 to 80% range. So we are admitting a lot of students. And when it comes to the quantitative, if there is a tiebreaker, we'll look at things like even absenteeism and things like that in terms of just how engaged is the student in the class. And really that also comes out oftentimes with some of the teacher and school counselor recommendations.
Yes, and I would echo a lot of that. I mean, as a school that's been test optional for, gosh, I think it's 15 years now. And I worked at another institution prior that was also test optional as well. It's really taking a look at the whole student, the whole picture. I mean, yes, it's true. We are educational institutions. So your grades and your courses, based on what's available at your school, that's going to reign supreme. That's going to be the first pass. What courses have you taken? How have you done in those courses? Have you comfortably challenged yourself? Then what else are you going to bring to our community, right? We are welcoming people into a community. So we want to take a look at all those aspects. What makes you tick? What makes you who you are? And how are you going to bring that to our campus? So there are times where some activities might be particularly more important to some places or some people. There are times where just having a well-rounded student is going to be important. So lots of different pieces that go into that. But, trying to use that application as an opportunity to be your true self and to show the different pieces of who you are is, I think, the best thing you can do to prepare, in addition to continuing, with the schoolwork and whatnot. I really like not having to use test scores and not having that as a measure for students. So I think having all of those other pieces line up, in addition to the recommendation letters and getting a sense of how somebody else views you within the context is important as well.
Thank you, guys. This question is going to go to Doug, Liana, and Amy. We've had some questions in the chat, in the Q&A about different types of classes. So I think everyone would promote students taking a rigorous course load, but that could be defined differently by school, but also differently by student, I think, if you could get into that. But what would you define as a rigorous course load for an applicant to your university? We'll start with you, Doug.
Okay, sure. So it is very much dependent on your school. So we know the curriculum at Archmere. We know it's available to you, and that's very helpful. In fact, one of the senior members of my staff reads Archmere because you're very important to us. We want to make sure that we're really being thoughtful as we're looking at your credentials. That's good news. The more difficult news is she is very seasoned and she is good at what she does. So she really understands what she's looking at. And when you get that decision, it's been very thoughtful. And the rigor piece, part of it is dependent on your major, right? So if you're applying to a program that has a tight cap, nursing, for example, where there are way more qualified applications than we could possibly bring in just because of the number of clinicals that are available. So we've got to winnow that down. We're going to be looking for more challenge, great grades in selective coursework. We're going to give more of an opportunity to residents of the state of Delaware than to residents outside of the state of Delaware. In general, with rigor, you have the ability to take rigorous courses at Archmere. We do not want or expect you to have taken all AP and honors courses, but we'd like to see that you've challenged yourself a bit with that, so that you've taken a couple courses that are at that level in most years, and that you've worked your way up. If you are in a STEM heavy discipline, that's where you can really demonstrate to us that I can handle the rigor. Keeping in mind that when you're coming to a research university, it's rigorous. We're looking for students who can do really well and help us advance our research mission. So strong college prep curriculum, some AP and honors sprinkled through there too, and good performance.
Thank you, Doug. Liana, you want to take this next?
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Doug said and try to add a little different nuance. In particular, which I didn't specifically answer with the last question, I should say, when you're applying to universities outside of the US, the norm is that it's only your academics that are part of an application review. Very few international universities will ask for essays or rec letters or have a list of activities as part of their application. That's something just to let you know that is the norm in the rest of the world, and that this is why the academics you could perceive is even carries more weight, because it's all mostly what we're only looking at. There's always some exceptions to that, so keep that in mind. But in general, most schools, most basic programs, it's just your grades and possibly test scores that we're looking at. When we're looking at the classes you're taking, we just like Doug said, we're going to know the school profile. We're going to know what is available to you in your school. But I can't emphasize enough. The biggest mistake I often see on an application is a student who has overloaded themselves. They have succumbed to the AP pressure that I must take all honors and all APs and all my classes for the last 2 years of high school. And I definitely don't advise that if it's going to sacrifice your grades, because at some point you're not getting the content knowledge needed to succeed in college or university if you're struggling really hard in high school. So it's nice to see rigor. It's nice to see a student challenge themselves. But I see many students that you can paint a picture looking at their record on what must have been going on in their minds when they were choosing their classes through high school. So it's quite interesting how we get really good at that. And you can even often go, why did you apply to this major? Why did you not apply to this program? So that's, another thing. It's do what you like, challenge yourself, but don't overdo it. I think the stress and anxiety in the US is probably the highest in the country, and I travel extensively and visit high schools all over the world. I don't know why, but it's definitely a trend that I see a big difference in. So the whole breathe advice, I don't know who said that earlier, please breathe, okay? And don't take too many. So rigor is really taken into context of what is available to you and what is accessible to you in your school. We're not going to penalize a student who attends a school that doesn't have access to APs. That's not that student's fault. So they're going to be given equal consideration in our admission process. So it really just depends.
I would agree in terms of, using the school profile. For students, if you don't know what we're talking about, when your counselors upload your transcript, they upload this other document with their recommendation letters that explains what's available at your school, what you're allowed to take, the fact that you have to get recommendation to continue on to honors courses and AP courses, that there are limits. So we use all of that. And much like what Doug said, at PC, we have the same person who's been visiting Archmere for 5 years, who you know, she will come visit when non-COVID times, she'll virtually visit, and then, you know, brings you all to the admissions committee. So she reads your file and explains the context of the school to the rest of us around the admissions table. We do something interesting, I think, at PC. I know we're not the only place that does it, but we recalculate your GPA. So rigor for us is a score that we give you on a, well, 1 to 10 scale, but you know, 5 to 10 is really what we end up talking about. Where 10 is that you have exhausted the school's options, everything that's available to you within that area. You know, a 5 or a 6 would be barely passing. Now, I don't mean passing grade-wise, but barely eligible to graduate. You know, we want to see consistency for a student. So continue to take foreign language through to the, you know, to the final year that you can at your school, unless you are putting yourself at risk of not passing your classes, right? You are all at a place where you are blessed with people who know you, people who have worked closely with you, who are working hard to give you good advice, not just your counselors, but your teachers. So if they're making recommendations about coursework, listen to them, because it's not only the rigor of your courses, but as has been said already, it's the success in those courses. So it needs to be that proper balance. So this is a place where I'd say definitely take the advice of those adults, trusted adults around you.
Great, thank you. All right, I'll direct this to Ed and Melinda. As families are trying to get to know you and your programs, we've all been asked the question, how's your bio program? How's history? The really general question that we hate to answer. What types of questions should they be asking to measure the success of these programs? What are some more pointed questions they can ask to kind of get the answers that they're actually looking for? We'll start with Ed.
Okay, well, thank you. You know, I really like the questions that really ask about outcomes. I think a lot of schools want to be measured on outcomes and not just, well, how's your psychology program or how is your accounting program? I think you're going to really hear counselors kind of tiptoe around that and just kind of give you general speak. But I think when they can point to exact examples of maybe a placement into graduate school or maybe some Fulbright scholarships that students have gotten beyond college and maybe Goldwater scholars or things like that. So I think asking about outcomes, certainly the job placement is a really big thing, and parents are obviously something that they really want to know about. Placement into medical school or law school. So really the outcomes is the major thing that I would ask, just beyond how good is this or how good is that.
I would echo what Ed said, that none of us are going to tell you that our proud programs are bad. That's just, we're not going to do it. But I want to challenge you to take some responsibility for doing some of this legwork on your own. We spend an awful lot of time and money and resources to put these answers at your fingertips, whether it is in printed collateral or in social media content or on our websites. And we put these things and we try to put it there in digestible ways so that you can ask those questions and find them on your own. We recognize that everybody's coming to the table with a different background. So whether it's a first generation student or a student for whom they have a lot of support as they navigate this process. But when you come to us and say, what is your psychology program like? I'm honestly going to say, well, what do you know about our psychology program? What do you want to do with psychology? Where do you want to go? So when you come to that college rep with those questions, you want to signal to us that you've done your homework, that you are asking very thoughtful, very, very measured questions, so that we're going to give you a measured response, not that canned response. I know that Edwin talked about getting the outcome piece of it, and that's the big piece. And right now you're going, well, why should I choose your school? I don't want to hear what somebody else did and now they've gotten a job. But that really is where the story is. And so I'm sure my peers on this call do this in some format at their institutions. We highlight an amazing student every week on the front of our website that gives a different student story. that talks about where they're from, in-state or out-of-state, what their high school was, what their undergraduate experience has been like. Have they been doing community service? Have they been doing working a part-time job? Have they been doing research on our campus or research with one of our many opportunities that are afforded to them, to kind of help tell that story and to show that next. I'm sure I'm not the only institution on here tonight that has an experiential learning component to their curriculum. We want you to see ways that you can get the book knowledge and then go have that practical hands-on application with it. So rather than tell me about your psychology program, take advantage of some of those pieces and maybe come to us with a question that's kind of pushing us to the next level to tell you a little bit more about how that program helps produce the outcomes and what that next is that you're looking for.
Thanks, Melinda. In the interest of time, I'm going to kind of limit the number of answers that we're getting so we can get to a couple more questions. This question will be for Doug and Liana. What are the institutional priorities at your school, and how might that affect your admissions process? Again, another opportunity to show our audience that every school is different. So what are some of your priorities, and how might we see that impact admissions decisions? We'll start with you, Doug.
Okay, so the first priority for the University of Delaware is serving the state of Delaware. And because of that, we have a variety of avenues for students to come into the university if they're residents of the state. So for example, students who apply for admission who do not meet the general requirements for main campus can come to us through our Associate in Arts program. That is not available to out-of-state students. We are also looking, if you're applying for particular majors that you don't qualify for, but in general you're admissible to the university, we'll place you in our University Studies program. So we'll work much harder to find an avenue for students who are residents of the state to be admitted to the university. At the same time, another major priority for the university is our research mission. So we are looking for students who have challenged themselves in high school, who have done well. You know, our reason for being is to advance knowledge, to advance research, to advance the answers to problems in the world. And our students do that in concert with our faculty. So we're looking for really capable students. So that's why we have to be a selective institution, and we have to bring students in who have really challenged themselves. And the last one I'll point to is we think it is very important for students to have a sense of the world and of the globe and their relationship with the United States relationship with other cultures. And we do that by creating many opportunities for students to study abroad. We work very hard to bring international students to the campus. So that's a huge piece for us as well. And those are just some of the key strategic points for the University of Delaware.
Thanks, Doug. Can we put the McGill stamp on that answer? A lot is very similar. We are also a public research intensive institution, and McGill is a relatively competitive institution to gain admission. So the reality is way more applications than we know what to do with. And our number one priority is admitting the strongest applicants we get each year. So that benchmark of our admission minimums, which is actually something that is published on our website, we can be very transparent about what it took to get in last year because we are only looking at grades. So that is something that is very new and different for most American students and families in this search process. That being said, we do have our institutional priorities when it comes to the diversity of who is on our campus. We're very fortunate that we've been able to maintain the balance we currently have and that we would like to maintain, which about half our students are from our province, the province of Quebec. We're about 30% international, and the rest of our students come from the rest of Canada. So right now we are fortunate that we're able to maintain that without doing anything that different with admission. We are still admitting the strongest students from those groups. It's not an advantage if you're Canadian or not Canadian. I get that question all the time. If there's any dual citizens out there, it's a great thing, but it doesn't affect your admission process or decision. It affects your tuition. So This is something that right now, that's our reality, and it's really looking for strongest students that are applying each year, and each year is a new year. And some years, some programs are more popular than others. So we'll see that fluctuation happen. So it is really, number one priority is our mission as a research institution.
Great, thank you. A nice segue. I'll direct this one at Ed and Amy. Talking about different majors and their competitive nature, how are they measured against the students' application, students applying for a specific program or major? Any programs that have different criteria, how is that handled by your university?
Amy, you want to go first?
Sure. So we tend to admit students to Providence College in general. So we want to look for your ability to succeed across the board. That said, in two particular areas, we're going to be a little bit more particular. One is the School of Business, and the other is our biology, or our sciences, I should say. If you are a student who struggles in mathematics, that's going to be a challenge when it comes to admission to a business program at PC. The same thing would go for the sciences. What is your foundation for math and science? To be a bio major, for example. Those are two areas. We were in an admission committee meeting today for a good part of the day, and we did say that. Did that student get to X or Y for business? X or Y in this case was a minimum of pre-calculus, hopefully calculus. Statistics could be an acceptable piece as well, just as an example. And I see some questions in the chat here. No, you don't have to have activities that match those majors. You don't have to, be day trading on the side on your free periods in order to then go to, a business school. Or, if your activities match, that's great. But, it's the academics that really need to fit for us anyway. Ed?
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback and say that you have to understand what schools you might be considering that have programs that have caps. I know at LVC, the one major that is most competitive is physical therapy, which is a major that we have a cap for. And that's because we have to find clinical placements for students. And there's only so many that we can do within our region. And as a result, then it's just a more competitive environment to be in, because we are going to admit you to the school first. So we're going to admit you because you meet the criteria to get into Lebanon Valley College. But then we're going to re-review you for physical therapy, and you're going to go up against the other candidates for that major. And then it comes down to supply and demand. So how many applications did we have in 2021 for that major versus 2020? We typically look at historical data to know if we have 45 slots, we might only be able to admit 70 students. And the next year we'll use that moving forward to say, okay, we might be able to move it up to 75 this year. But a lot of it depends on just the size and strength of the applicant pool, which we don't know going in year to year how that will be. But I think colleges know what majors are in high demand and what they have limited space for. So when you are visiting virtually or in person, I think it's important to ask that question, like, I'm considering this major, is that a major that has a cap, or is that a major that's more competitive than others? I think the hardest part right now is with you still in your junior year, just making sure you're locking in on what you want to study in college. And for some of you, I'm sure you have clarity, and it's going to be an easy decision. But for many of you, I'm sure you're still kind of weighing your options. So you might not know right now that you're interested in actuarial science or physical therapy or whatever that major may be. So I think it's important to just ask in general, what majors have caps, and just so you know, perhaps if that is a school you're considering, that it just might be a little bit harder to gain admission into that school or into that major.
Can I throw in one more piece? I think what Ed was just saying too, about asking at the different schools. Please do ask us. Please do look on our websites. You know, one thing you need to get comfortable with, in my opinion, is that the answer "it depends" is going to be the most common answer you're going to find through this college process. We're not trying to blow you off. We're not trying to give a quick answer, but it genuinely depends. And I think that's what this panel is trying to show you as well. So getting comfortable with that, it depends. Ask. We're happy to answer those questions. This might be my 20 whatever year going through this admissions process, but it's your first time and that's okay.
Thank you, Amy. Yes, we will certainly address over and over again that if we had 5 different schools on this panel, we'd be getting 5 different answers from people. And that's just, again, why we try to get as much diversity and varied opinions and answers as possible. I'm going to direct this question toward Doug and Melinda. Getting a little bit more fast forwarding kind of the application process. Like to know what you think your application says about your institution in terms of the questions you ask or how you go about reviewing applications. Melinda, I'm going to start with you on this one. So what does UGA's application say about University of Georgia?
I think the fact that we offer 3 different ways in which you can apply, it should signal that we are trying to be inclusive and flexible and open to meet students where they are. We have questions on the application that obviously we need the responses to, but we also have sections and portions that are optional where the student doesn't have to answer those pieces. We spend a good bit of time on your grades and rigor of curriculum, but in a holistic review process, we're looking to see through those questions, how are you going to contribute to our campus and our community? How are you going to come in and stretch yourself? And I think our essay prompts look to that as well. We want to see how willing you are to be uncomfortable. And to grow through that experience. College is when you are supposed to try new things and to explore different approaches and different thoughts to different things and to find what is going to be your path. And so I hope that our application gives students the opportunity to give us their story, whether they have it all figured out or they recognize that they don't and that they have time to figure it out. That would be my hope with our application.
Yeah, thank you, Melinda. I think for the University of Delaware, we accept the Common Application, the Coalition Application, and those platforms. The goal of those platforms is to help make the process more accessible because you can apply to multiple schools using those platforms, and they also allow us to customize some questions. So I would echo a lot of the things that Melinda said, but I would also say that part of what we've done over the last few years is in working with school counselors that talk to us about the difficulties that students have getting through the application. We've tried very hard to both simplify it and to put power into the hands of the student to complete it, but it also puts a burden on students. So for example, students have to self-report their academic record to the University of Delaware. That means you have to go to another piece of software and fill out all of the courses you've taken, all of the grades that you got. That software helps us recalculate your grades because, not to torture you, but because we get 34,000 applications, 20,000 of those are early action, meaning we've got to make a decision on those by the end of January, and you have to get everything to us by early November. So those tools allow us to do some really heavy lifting in a short period of time. So part of what may look like, I don't know, bureaucracy and red tape maybe is really about trying to create a process that's efficient enough to get a decision to you as quickly as we possibly can, but also to weigh all of the important information that we need to see. So beyond the grades, giving you the opportunity to tell us the other things that we need to know about you, to give your school counselor the opportunity to weigh in and let us know, here is a student that you really need to pay attention to this about them. This is what would make them, if it's not obvious, this is what would make that student a great candidate for your university, for example. So it's, we're trying to do a lot of things with that application. And I will tell you, it's still a heavy lift. It's still a lot to get through that application. And we will help you with it, but we can't make it, it's not simple. It's an important process and it's going to take some time to get through it, but there's lots of help to get through it.
Cool. Thank you. All right, I think this will be our last official question. Then we'll move to some kind of parting shots from you all and a close from Mr. Bohm. So I'll ask Liana and Amy, what are some common mistakes that you see students make during the application process? And are there things, easy things to avoid that will make their process smoother?
Yeah, well, I'll put on my former U.S. admissions counselor hat and say, when you are writing essays and letters, putting the right name of the school goes a long way. And we see that mistake a lot. I would say more from the international perspective, as working for McGill now. The most common mistake I alluded to earlier is students applying to the wrong program. And that's something they're not as conditioned to look for in the US, that when you apply, you're either applying to a degree where you might still have 30 or 40 majors to choose from, but in some cases you're applying to a major at our institution. And that's common not across Canada and internationally, globally, I should say. So really doing your research ahead of time, especially because most international schools are able to be a little more transparent about grades and prerequisite courses and specific minimums they could have, making sure you're really picking the right programs on the application. We actually do something different than a lot of schools. We allow you apply to 2 programs and you get 2 decisions. It's like 2 applications in one. So you can really be strategic in what you're applying to. Maybe one is more of a reach. The other one is something, you have a better chance of getting into, but taking that time, our application takes only about 20 minutes, but the time and effort should be put in understanding the pathways and the programs and making sure you're picking the right pathway.
Great. I'd say I want to echo the piece about just paying attention to your writing throughout the application. Just be sure that you're thoughtful in what you're writing and how you're writing it. Use capital letters, use punctuation. I know that sounds basic, but again, we were looking at an application today. The student didn't even capitalize his own name. He just was, you're not texting someone, you're filling out a legal document. So please make sure you do that. Proofread those essays, not just spell check. Proofread, because there are times where you spell the word correctly, but it's not the word you meant, or you totally skipped a word. And then the last thing would just be true to yourself in filling this out. Don't try to predict what I want to read, or what I want to hear, or what I think will look good, because you don't know who's going to be reading it. So what you're trying to appeal to for one person may turn somebody else completely off. But if you are authentically you, if you're funny, you can write a funny essay. Not a disrespectful one, but a funny one. That's okay. So just let it be your voice as best you can. And if you don't know if you're doing that, ask one of the trusted adults in your life or, a good friend.
Our favorite admission story, Amy, is the essay about the student that goes pheasant hunting but wrote the word peasant instead of pheasant, making them a carnivore, which I don't think any of you would want on your campuses. So yes, proofread instead of spell check is a wonderful recommendation.
There's somebody talking about the varsity plague that they got from swimming, not the varsity plaque.
Okay. So we're going to conclude with a message from each of our panelists. Again, thank you very much for giving your time and expertise to us tonight. One of the best things about the admissions profession is that there's just some really good people doing what we do, trying to help students and families manage what they believe is an insurmountable, task in terms of finding the right school, applying to schools, getting into schools, and then making their ultimate decision about where they're going to call home for the next 4 years. Students on a normal year, if we'd be in person, we'd be concluding the program by showing appreciation and introducing ourselves to each of our panelists with a handshake and a thank you and an introduction to try and humanize this process because all of the people on our panel tonight they enjoy working with young people. They enjoy providing a service, whether it's answering a question about their university or just helping you along the way a little bit. And as you do get to meet them and others like them, you will get to know this. So in lieu of not being able to introduce yourselves and our panelists getting to meet you personally, we've asked each of them to tell a story about where this process has really been a human process for them, where they've either helped or seen help being provided to a student. And so you can kind of get a feel for, these people are here to help you. This is a helping process, not a weeding out process. So Ed, we're gonna start with you. So we're gonna ask for your best story here.
Well, it's not really a story per se, but just the advice I try to give people is I don't try to shove something down your throat like you have to love LVC. This is a great school. You're going to love it. I just try to make a compelling story in terms of whether you think it's the right fit. You know, Amy talked a lot about this in one of her answers about you doing the soul searching and trying to find a school that you think is the best fit for you. And all of us, I think, are just champions of you doing that and just making sure that you're able to really identify what you think is going to be a good fit, whether it's what's offered inside the classroom, outside the classroom, or both. So I can tell you, we all have goals. We all have enrollment goals, but we really like to tell students, I mean, I'm the first one to tell someone, we're probably not a good fit for you. Based on what you've shared with me so far, you might want to look at this school or you might want to look at this school. So I think with our many years of experience, those of us on this panel, we're going to also try to steer you in a direction that we think is a better fit for you. So don't feel like the person who's just going to try to sell you a car or, you know, what's it going to take to take it off the lot today? That's not really what we're here to do. We're here to really just try to help you because we know we've seen this thousands and thousands and thousands of times, but this is the one time that you're doing it. So we're here to help and we're not here to try to just sell you something. So that's not a story, but just a piece of advice.
Melinda?
I think I would ring similarly to Ed. I don't know that I have a story, Chris. I'm sorry to let you down on that one, but I really would. Part of the reason I got into this business was because I enjoyed students truly finding what was going to be the right fit place for them. My last 2 years of high school, I was at a boarding school and I loved nothing more than working with that admissions office and giving tours and showing my enthusiasm. And for some students, they shared that, and for some they didn't. And then working in admissions offices as a student over undergrad and then grad school, and then professionally, that has kind of come full circle. At an institution the size of UGA, we don't get the benefit of knowing the students in the process of coming through the door and then while they're on their campus and then seeing them and celebrating with them at the end. But when those students take the time, and as I said earlier, with that clock and that mirror, and they look back on their time at Georgia, and they even send the shortest of emails to say, hey, I came upon this email from 5 years ago when I was a high school senior going through the process. And we know that what we did mattered. You get one shot at being a high school senior. You get one shot at being a high school junior. I hope you only have to look at the college process one time, but I think if you take a little while to get there, that's okay. If you take it all out, that is okay. Be you, as Amy said, be your authentic, you're authentic and you're genuine and your genuine self, and give yourself some grace. We are in an environment that you think we're deliberately putting pressure on you. And as Chris and Ed said, we're not. We care. We're truly compassionate people, and we want to help you through the process.
Doug?
Thanks, Chris. So I guess I would say, for me, I truly miss the opportunity that would typically happen at the end of this program, the one-to-one interaction with folks. And mostly because, unfortunately, it is impossible for me to be able to talk to every parent and student who has a question about the University of Delaware or their decision, and there aren't the hours in the day. And honestly, my favorite thing is when we have in-person programs, and juniors, we're going to get there again. This pandemic will end. There will be a vaccine. We will have in-person events. We don't know when, but that's going to happen. And the thing I most look forward to, when I do big welcomes at those events, afterwards, the folks who come up to me, the parents and the students who stand in line and wait and just have a little question, or there's something they want to tell me. I love that. Parents, there is no question that you have that makes me uncomfortable, that should make you uncomfortable. It's fun to watch the students squirm sometimes when their parents are asking questions, but I love that. So the reason I love that is the reason that I'm in this work. And we are educators in admissions. We're not salespeople, we are educators. So we're helping with the mission of the university. And that's to connect you to a great outcome for your future, whether it's with us or with some other institution. I've worked in higher education for decades, and I've been at regional public institutions. I've worked at community colleges. I've worked in a number of different settings. And there is a glove for every hand. And let us help you find it, because that's what we love to do. So just the one-on-one opportunities I have with students and parents, that's what I love the most. And I think that I am not unusual in this profession. So come to the University of Delaware's Blue and Golden event next fall and stand in line afterwards and say, remember when you said, and make me stand there for an hour if you have to. Thank you so much for having the opportunity to be here virtually with you too.
Thanks, Doug. Liana?
Yeah, thank you. I think there's a theme here. I think you guys can tell. We probably could make some people cry with all this positive. But I do think I started my career in admissions not knowing that's what I was doing when I was a student and needed a job, and became the campus tour coordinator at my alma mater. And it was then that I heard somebody in our office say to a visiting student and family, we call it admissions for a reason. It's because we want to admit you. And I think there's a perception that we're all here as gatekeepers and that we're looking for reasons to say no, but the exact opposite is true. And we also all do this because we love to work with students, and it's probably what I miss the most now, working at a university like McGill. We're very big. We have about 8 staff members that cover the whole globe for outreach events, so I certainly don't get as much one-on-one time as I used to have. But those moments are really precious to us, and that's what we really want to have you be as honest with us about who you are and what you're looking for, so we can really help you get the answers you need, even if that answer is, I think you should apply to XYZ college. I had a colleague at another university that emailed me a screenshot of an application, and the question on their application is, how did you hear about our university? And the answer was, well, Leanna at McGill University told me about your school. So I think that's just a little example. Remember, we're human too. We get Zoom fatigue also. And we really appreciate just those moments to be with directly corresponding with you, even if we can't always do it. You might not always agree with our decisions. Know that we're human, we can make mistakes, we have systems and processes and a job we have to get done, but ultimately our number one priority is serving our students and our families and making sure we're getting you where you need to go, even if maybe it's not our school.
Okay. Me, yes. You just saw Doug's cat there. I'm sure you saw mine a few minutes ago in the back. Yes, you've heard some of us mention that we're parents as well. But super tiny quick story is when, Melinda mentioned earlier that, she hopes this is the only time you have to go through the college search process. And I would echo that. However, it's okay if it's not the right fit the first time. And it's okay if you decide maybe you should do something else. My story is related to one of those cases where I was in admissions, well, still am, but when I was in admissions at another school and doing transfer as part of my job, there was a young man who came through and took a tour, and we chatted a bit after about why he wanted to transfer back to be closer to home, et cetera, et cetera. He ended up becoming one of our tour guides. We ended up staying in touch. He ended up being the person that I called when I was leaving that institution to come work at PC, because he was a senior and I knew he wasn't quite sure what his next steps were. So I said, Thomas, what do you think? My desk is going to be open. I think you should put your name in. And so he ended up quite literally taking my chair and working in my old office for quite some time, which was great. He is now a physician's assistant doing emergency work, which is pretty cool, but he had a total different life path. But to be able to make those connections with people and to stay in touch with them is something that I think you've heard us all say. We're real people who are dealing with all of this stuff too. So we wish you the best, and hopefully we'll cross paths as we go through this.
Great. Thank you, everybody. All right. So what's next? Next thing on your immediate agenda will be our intro meetings. You'll get an opportunity to schedule those after Thanksgiving. They're pretty straightforward. Honestly, we're just trying to get to know you. And as Mr. Bum said at the beginning, see where you are in the process, see where we're going to begin, see how we're going to really get this thing going. Some of you will be further along than others. That's okay. Wherever you are is the right place where we're going to be. So these meetings will be us getting to know you and just seeing what you're thinking about the process. So that's the next thing. As I mentioned earlier, the junior parent programs coming up. Make sure you log those on your calendars and tell your parents if they're not on here right now. So those are the next two most immediate things for you guys.
Also, a quick little plug again for the Practice ACT, and a reminder that we'll have an invitation out in the somewhat near future about a Practice SAT opportunity in January. If you haven't noticed, our preferred method of communication is email, so please check your emails. Also, if you haven't noticed, usually when you get an email, it means mom or dad gets the same email, so they will know what you are or are not reading. So please check your emails and let us know if you have any questions about any of those future programs.
And the last feature program that we wanted to highlight is our upcoming Junior Career Day. We're very excited to say that we will be bringing it mostly virtual, and that will be happening on Thursday, January 21st. You will have the opportunity to sit in on several different sessions on a variety of different career fields from Archmere alumni and Archmere friends, and it will be a really great day to learn about a bunch of different careers. And I know there were several questions about majors and careers in the question and answer, so that will be a great day to think about those different types of things.
And as for questions and learning more, there was no way we were going to get to everybody's questions about every single thing. We will have college seminars starting in the spring semester. But also, this is a good opportunity to engage your college counselor. If you had a question tonight that you didn't get to ask or didn't get answered, or just a thought that you wonder how the question would have been answered, please reach out to us tonight, tomorrow, or in the coming weeks and say, hey, Mr. Bum, I had a question. Could you answer it for me, please? That could be email, that could be in person. That's how we get to know each other and get to know what you're looking for and get to help you try to find the right college fits for you. So I'd like to thank again our panelists tonight for giving us their time. You may cross paths with them again in the future, and I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. So everyone, thank you very much. Thank you for being an attentive audience tonight. Everybody take care, be safe, and if I do not see you, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everybody. Be safe, be healthy.